Empires rarely believe they are temporary. At their height, they appear permanent, inevitable, carved into history itself. Their borders stretch across continents, their symbols dominate skylines, and their authority feels unquestionable. Roads, railways, languages, currencies, and laws bind distant lands into a single system. To those living inside them, empires feel eternal. They promise order, stability, and power. Yet history shows a brutal truth. No empire collapses because it is attacked from the outside alone. Empires fall when the weight of their own success becomes too heavy to carry. At first, decline is invisible. The empire still functions, the flags still fly, the army still march, but beneath the surface, cracks begin to form. Expansion creates obligations. Every new territory demands protection, administration, and resources. What once brought wealth now drains it. The cost of control grows faster than the benefits of dominance. Bureaucracy expands, decision-making slows, the center becomes distant from the edges it governs. What was once strength quietly turns into strain. Empires are built on the belief that they know what is best for others. This belief allows control to feel justified. Colonies are told they are being civilized, protected, or guided. But as time passes, this narrative weakens. Education spreads, communication improves. Local populations begin to see the imbalance clearly. They provide labor, resources, and loyalty, yet receive limited power in return. The empire speaks of unity, but practices hierarchy. Awareness becomes dangerous. Once people begin to question legitimacy, authority no longer feels natural, it feels imposed. War accelerates everything. The 20th century, shaped by global conflict, exposed the vulnerability of empires like never before. 2 world wars drained manpower, finances, and morale. Imperial nations fought to survive, not to govern distant lands. Colonies were asked to bleed for empires that denied them equality. Millions fought in wars that were not theirs, for causes that offered no freedom in return. When the wars ended, the illusion of imperial superiority was shattered. Empires that once claimed invincibility emerged exhausted, indebted, and dependent. After the Second World War, the balance of power shifted decisively. Europe, once the center of global empires, lay in ruins. Economies were broken, cities were destroyed. Maintaining overseas dominance became impossible. At the same time, a new global consciousness emerged. The language of self-determination spread. Independence was no longer an abstract idea, it was a demand. Colonies did not suddenly become rebellious, they became aware of their strength and their numbers. The empire could no longer pretend it was irreplaceable. Resistance movements took many forms. Some were peaceful, organized through political pressure, strikes, and mass protest. Others turned violent, driven by decades of repression and frustration. Empires responded with force, believing control could be restored through strength. But force only deepened resentment. Every crackdown created martyrs. Every suppression confirmed the empire's moral weakness. Control became more expensive and less effective. The more tightly empires held on, the faster they lost legitimacy. Economics played a decisive role in imperial collapse. Maintaining global dominance required constant investment, yet post-war economies struggled to recover. Infrastructure at home demanded attention. Populations questioned why resources were spent abroad while living conditions stagnated domestically. The empire no longer felt beneficial to those who sustained it. Political leaders faced pressure from both ends, colonies demanding independence and citizens demanding reform. Something had to give. Empires also failed because they could not adapt fast enough. Their systems were designed for control, not for partnership. Power flowed in one direction. When the world changed, empires responded with hesitation or denial. They attempted gradual reforms that satisfied no one. Too little freedom for colonies, too much concession for hardliners. This paralysis was fatal. History does not wait for consensus. It moves forward regardless of those clinging to the past. The moment of collapse is rarely dramatic. There is no single battle, no final surrender. Empires fade through withdrawals, treaties, and administrative handovers. Flags are lowered quietly. Offices are emptied. Borders are redrawn with ink instead of blood, though blood often follows later. For the empire, the end feels humiliating. For the newly independent nations, it feels uncertain. Freedom arrives without instructions. Independence solves one problem and reveals many others. The end of empires does not erase its impact. New nations inherit borders drawn for imperial convenience, not cultural or ethnic unity. These borders often divide communities and force rival groups together. Colonial economies designed to extract resources struggle to transform into balanced systems. Political institutions modeled after imperial rule may not fit local realities. Independence brings pride, but also instability. The shadow of empire lingers long after it ends. For former imperial powers, collapse forces a reckoning. Identity must be rebuilt. Nations that once defined themselves by dominance must learn to exist without it. This transition is painful. Pride turns into nostalgia. History is rewritten to soften guilt. The empire becomes a memory, often romanticized, rarely examined honestly. Yet the loss of empire also creates space for change. Societies can refocus inward, rebuilding without the burden of control. Globally, the end of empires reshaped the world order. Power did not disappear, it shifted. Superpowers emerged, filling the vacuum left behind. The Cold War exploited former colonies as arenas of influence. Independence did not guarantee peace. It often placed young nations into new forms of dependency. The world moved from direct control to indirect influence. Empires ended, but dominance evolved. The most important lesson of imperial collapse is not about weakness, but about limits. No system can expand endlessly. No authority can remain unquestioned forever. Empires fail when they confuse control with legitimacy and power with permanence. They underestimate the force of identity, dignity, and memory. People may endure domination for generations, but they do not forget it. History shows that the end of empires is not a tragedy reserved for the defeated. It is a pattern that repeats because human systems are finite. The ruins of past empires litter the world, silent reminders that dominance is temporary. What remains is influence, culture, and consequence. The roads, languages, and institutions survive, reshaped by those who inherit them. In the modern world, empires longer look like they once did. They are less visible, more economic, more technological. Control is exercised through markets, data, and influence rather than flags and armies. Yet the lesson remains unchanged. Any system that concentrates power without consent carries the seeds of its own decline. The form may change, but the outcome does not. The end of empires marks not the end of history, but a transition. It forces humanity to confront uncomfortable truths about power, justice, and responsibility. Empires fail not because the world rejects order, but because it demands fairness. They collapse when those governed no longer believe the system serves them. In the quiet moments after empire ends, something profound happens. The world becomes more fragmented, more complex, and more uncertain. Yet it also becomes more honest. Power is exposed. Authority must be earned again. The illusion of eternity dissolves. The end of empires teaches a final lesson. Nothing built by humans lasts forever. Structures rise, dominate, and fall. What endures are the choices made during decline. Whether collapse leads to renewal or chaos depends on how power is released, not how tightly it is held. Empires die when they refuse to let go. History moves on regardless.